So,
Yeah.
you would like
Yeah.
to talk about a pretty heavy subject this week.
So yeah, this is a heavy subject, man, and I appreciate how careful you're being about it as well, because I think talking about rape is sometimes unfortunately polarizing, like everything else can be polarizing, right? And
Absolutely.
it things being a survivor of abuse, I don't know exactly how to take on this subject because there's just such an imbalance, right?
Hmm.
So we see, and I'm not going to get into the details of what's in the media about these generals or whoever they are in the Canadian military
Yeah.
who are now under the microscope again, right?
Hmm.
And so we know this. I'm just going off of the assumption that people are up to speed on this, that this is not the first time the military's been accused of um, having a rape culture, right? Like
Yep.
there's no other way to look at it. I don't like saying the word any more than people want to hear it, right? Like
Yeah.
um
Well, and they
but
did like in the wasn't it in the mid to late '90s? At least the Canadian military went through a huge, massive like revamping of
yeah.
policies and a full on cultural change is what they were quoting it.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that
Regarding
was
this specific topic, right? So
exactly.
yeah.
um and and that's what I mean. And it's not just localized to Canada. Obviously the States has
Yeah.
had there's been lots of stuff in the history of the United States military as
Yeah.
well, right? Of this culture being, and some law enforcement cultures, right? Like
Yeah.
it, it's, and not, I'm not suggesting that, um, police departments all have like this hidden rape culture. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, as a paramilitary organization, I think actually what I'm doing is asking a question. I don't think I'm
Yeah.
saying anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because I'm not sure, right? Like,
Mhm.
is that a part of law enforcement? Like, it seems to be a part of the military. And
Yeah.
on that note, like, is it that common in the military? And would there be people that could actually like corroborate some of this stuff? I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, nobody wants to implicate themselves,
For
right?
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, it would be a whole lot easier if they would. Like, it would, and it would make the process less shameful for the victim,
Yeah.
right? And so, oh, that's how I want to kind of look at this, right? I want to look at this from um, a little bit about the victim perspective, right?
Yeah.
And even saying the word victim, I'm going to say survivor. Okay.
Yep.
I'll say survivor instead of victim because survivors are pretty tough, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, and they're tough of character, tough of spirit, obviously, right? Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
tough physically too, in some cases, but like just tough humans.
Oh yeah.
Um, and and so that I just want to kind of look at it, I guess, from that perspective, which is also my perspective, right? Like from that, um, the resilience, I guess, that you can learn if you can survive,
Hmm.
long enough. Um, but I wonder what these cultures really are like, right? Because I've never really been a part of it, like
Yeah. I
even
haven't
now.
either.
I mean, I know people who are, obviously police officers, and I know that they're not doing that stuff. Like I know that, right? I know these
Yep.
people, these individuals aren't doing that. Um, I just wonder if maybe the policies of these organizations, the military, the paramilitary organizations, I wonder if the policies inherently just simply silence the victims. Like, are they
Yeah.
designed to do that, do you think?
Well, I think I really think it's tough because you have environments where so much power rests in people, like your career, your whole future,
Mhm.
your entire lifestyle rests in the hands of your superior.
Yeah.
And I think that's a deadly game to play when you don't have checks and balances.
Mhm.
And what I as a civilian, looking at these organizations, like you, have never been part of them. I don't know anything about them as far as being on the inside,
Well, yeah,
but
I
it
mean,
just
that's the
seems
thing.
like they're built. to protect themselves, and they're built on this power structure. And to me, it seems like they almost attract people that would absorb that power feeling, that like I have power over others kind of
because
person.
it does tend to attract a certain personality type, right? Like
Yeah,
certain character types. I shouldn't
yeah,
say character, but characteristics, more like
yeah.
that. um and that's that's a necessary thing. They
Absolutely.
in order to perform the duties, right, like that the military and law enforcement have to perform,
Yeah.
um they're definitely going to have to be able to think differently than me, right?
Oh,
Like,
completely. Yeah. And
and
that structure is there for a purpose that
yeah,
is like actually useful, right? I
100%.
mean, you
I
need a certain structure for those kinds of jobs.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're saying, right? So, and so, but is maybe the result of that structure a culture that ignores like misogyny, right? Like, let's call it
Yeah.
misogyny, because I cannot believe that um that is that prevalent in law enforcement. I just can't. I have a hard time with it. I'm sure that it
Yeah.
happens. Like, I'm sure that it happens, but I have a real hard time with that being a norm, right?
Mhm.
Because I just don't see it. I see way too many police officers standing up for what's right, like with other police officers.
Mhm.
Uh, I see more of that, right? And
Mhm.
obviously much more of that than even like stories of like inter organizational assaults or what
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and assaults and rapes, however different that may be. I don't know the different in definition, but um, yeah, I wonder if that, like, if that protection is inherent because it protects against everything, right? Like that protection is
Yeah.
there because these folks put themselves in harm's way regularly, right?
Yeah.
And we need to protect them, right? But not from those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I wonder if the structure is just not narrow enough in some cases, right? When
Yeah.
militaries have these, I don't even know what to call that, man, because it's been like a part of military culture seemingly forever,
Well, I
right?
think I think that's where we have to step back and take a broader view of what's look at every structure, like government related, whether it's military, police, fire departments, the actual government structure itself, government departments that just provide services. And all of those structures are built on a power base.
Yeah.
There's always somebody with more power, more power. And those people operate with impunity, it almost seems. As an example, if you're a member of parliament, the Criminal Code of Canada doesn't apply in the House of Parliament.
What?
The Criminal Code of Canada does not apply to in the House of Parliament. It is a
How's that work?
completely different police force.
Really?
So things like sexual assault and sexual harassment, even though they're in the criminal code, is that Floyd?
Yeah.
But even
Sorry,
because
man.
even those things are in the criminal code, they can do them and get away with it because it doesn't apply to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where,
Shut the front door, man. Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's the difference in the police force? Like, is it
Well,
like a
it's
Vatican
a
police kind
parliament
of thing?
police. Yeah, like it's a parliament police force.
Okay,
There's
so it's
RCMP there as well,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
they can't enforce the laws
Well, we know
in
how
that
well
building.
the RCMP is at like
Yeah, but I think
like,
that's
how
where
would the
we.
RCMP even know if anyone else was corrupt? Like, like,
Yeah, I mean
like,
they're so busy doing it themselves,
right? Like they're basically that uncle nobody wants to like drive with because they
basically.
know
Yeah,
he's drunk, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
sorry, man.
But I guess my whole point with that was just that I think from what I see is there's seemingly a lack of accountability and transparency
Yeah,
because we don't get to see what happens.
yeah,
We don't get to hear, like they don't have to report, sexual assault cases to
yeah.
a public authority. And
So
so when they don't do that, then how do we not see it as secretive?
yeah,
You know?
and that's the thing, and why this is the thing about organizational like silos and stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
everything stays in house. Like we don't, and
Hmm.
if it stays in house, then that means it's fine, right?
Yeah.
But like I don't know. It seems like we don't realize how insidious this stuff is, right? Like when we lock it down with secrets, whether you're an organization or an individual, right? Like it becomes insidious. It gets in the water, right? Like
Absolutely.
and then you have people doing things that are just absurd, right? Like
Yeah.
and those people would not have even done those things in under different circumstances, right? Like
For sure.
and so it's tricky, man.
It is.
Tricky. But I want to tell you a story because I know it's going to be I'll tell it to you after we're done
Sure.
because it'll be something that you'll be happy to hear the story. I was so happy to hear it.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, what were we talking about, man?
I think just the institutionalization of this, and I think realistically, I think that's what this really boils down to is we've built these structures based on 14th century power shift dynamics based on royal minds and how they wanted to structure their power structure. And it's 2021.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we don't have, and I don't mean to like just dog on all agencies, but I think in general, we just have a lack of accountability and transparency. It doesn't give people a lot of hope when you hear stories like of people doing these things, and it either gets swept under the rug, or we don't know what kind of discipline has happened, or names can't be published, or
that might be fair, right? Like I don't know how I feel about public registries and stuff like that. Like I have to be honest with you.
I'm not sure how I feel about that either.
Like part of me is like, it's a necessity because it allows neighborhoods and people to be aware, right?
Yeah.
But there's also the other side of that where humans, we don't tend to be reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Like and so that's why it worries me, only for that reason, because we don't tend to be reasonable.
Especially not in groups,
and especially about that subject, right? Like when it comes to children, most of us are very unreasonable, right? Which is exactly why we shouldn't be doing anything except for trying to find the most humane way of solving that problem, right? Like whatever that looks like. I wish I was that smart, right? Because that's a big one. But it's like, and I don't want to get fixated on like law enforcement, right? Or the military, because I bet you the only reason we hear about those organizations, about anything bad that they do, is because they're public, right?
Absolutely.
Like they're government. And so where do we don't even get to discuss like what happens behind Enron's doors, right? Or what happens behind Deloitte and Touche's doors. Right? We're not talking about that shit, dude. And
like I have 1 in 4 North American women will be sexually harassed or assaulted during their lifetime, and it's
1 in 4.
I think it's 1 in 2 Indigenous women.
Yeah. Oh,
that's man. A lot. That's a lot more than military, police, and government agents.
Of course, it is, man. Yeah.
Like that's the problem we have in society.
Yeah.
We've, there's the famous like the what is that, the rape case in the States where that whole like football team was basically nice. Was basically
just doing a plug real quick, man. Don't worry.
For my old podcast.
Yeah, man.
But they were basically handed slap on the wrist sentences.
Yeah.
For raping someone because they all had promising futures as young athletes.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? It's those things, and like we've like I don't like to say this has rape culture, that does. I think our culture does.
When
the stats are like that, you can't deny it.
And I don't even know if it's an overall rape culture, like quote unquote, but an overall misogynistic culture, right?
Absolutely.
Like and I think in that misogyny is where a lot of the violence comes from, right?
Well,
like,
and keeping in mind it's about power.
And it taps into the monkey brain for a lot of people, right? Like
absolutely.
It just taps into it and they can't shut it off for whatever reason, right?
And I mean, you can like look at our culture, like look at all these celebrities, like Rob Lowe, who had sex with a 16-year-old when he wasn't 16. But we've just all like, that's a joke now. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we'll give him a hard time on Comedy Central's roasts, but
You know why, man? Because it's boys. Like Corey
yeah,
Feldman, Corey
yeah,
Haim, a lot of those boys, man, they were ignored. They
totally.
nobody paid attention, man, until the women started that, like that Me Too brought a
Yeah,
lot of stuff to light that wasn't
absolutely.
coming forward, man.
Like, look
Right?
at all
Like,
this Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, like
right?
Louis C.K. Like you go on and on. Like this stuff,
Yeah.
it is not new. It is
And
not relegated to one place or the other in society,
no,
man. This is
that's
a
for
problem.
sure. And I think, yeah, I think you're right. And that problem, I think, is that like overinflated male ego versus like and
Mhm.
added in with misogyny, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah,
the general view that men are more like powerful than women, right? And
yeah,
more important in some cultures. And uh,
absolutely.
I would wager, I would suggest that the overall feeling of most cultures that I've encountered is misogynistic to the for most part,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
and I
Well,
don't
I
mean
mean,
like,
most of the world was colonized by Britain at one point, so
yeah, that's right.
we
So,
kind
and
of
I'm
took on
not,
their traits.
yeah, I'm not saying every misogynist is a violent misogynist, right? I'm just
Right?
saying
Yeah, yeah,
that's what I think is maybe the stem of the violence when it does
absolutely.
happen, right?
Yeah,
Because there's a sense of entitlement,
yeah,
that seems to come along with that, as
absolutely.
well as in the punishments, right,
Hmm.
or the lack of punishments. There is
Right.
there's a deep sense of entitlement, man, when you can actually say with a straight face, we don't want to hurt their careers,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
So we're not going to put them in prison
yeah.
because,
Or we'll give him a
uh,
really light sentence at a
yeah,
reduced sentence, so he doesn't go on the registry, or
yeah,
like.
yeah.
No, I
Somehow,
agree. Yeah,
yeah, and I get it, man. Like I don't know the ins and outs of all the legal bullshit that allows people to do that,
yeah.
and that would justify them doing that. I have no idea how they come up with that. Only that the outcome seems absurd, right? Like
It
that's all
does.
I know.
Yeah,
And so that doesn't reinforce change, right?
yeah.
Like there's nothing to sort of motivate change, I guess. And I know that, like, since we're on the subject of misogyny, like I have to, like, obviously, um I'm accountable too, right? Like I've been
Hmm.
misogynistic in my life, like 100%. Like,
Sure, I have. Yep.
um not violently misogynistic, but I've been misogynistic for
Oh,
sure,
sure. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
where
yeah,
where I thought I was the shit because I was the guy, right? Like,
yeah.
and I mean, obviously that's absurd, you
But
know.
that says a lot right there, because you and I both feel that we've done that. Like,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure every guy out there, for the most part, can say, yeah, at some point in time, I've said a joke, or I've made a
Yeah,
comment, or
yeah,
it was kind of a dick move to say or do.
yeah,
And
yeah.
being on the innocent side of things, where that's all it is, a word or a
Mhm.
joke or something. Not that those are innocent, but like, we can honestly say most of us have done that. That
100%, man.
says to me
I have,
we're learning it somewhere,
of course,
you
man.
know.
Yeah,
And
it's
when you look,
accepted somewhere too.
exactly, and when you look at like everything we're raised as, it's separation. It's separation by race, separation by culture, separation by imaginary lines on a map,
Yeah,
separation by gender, separation by sexual orientation. And it's
my
this
imaginary
separation.
friends.
Yeah, like, I just have to hate that group because
Yeah,
I'm in this group, and we don't like that group.
I
And
know, man. I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but
I don't
I
get it
see how
anymore.
in society our politicians and
Hmm.
teachers and these structures that we put our children through, that's where they're learning that. You know what I mean?
Hmm. 100%.
Um, girls go to school and they get their bras strapped, and teachers go, those are just being boys, boys being
Yep.
boys. That's sexual harassment.
It is, man. And the
You
fact
know?
that it was like so it was so encouraged, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, oh well, he dipped her hair in ink because he likes her. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he
He
pulled
hits you
her
because he likes
hair.
you.
Yeah, he pulled her hair because he likes her. It's like
Yeah.
that only reinforces the same notion, right? Like that when you get older, if if you like somebody, you just go ahead and you grab them, right?
Yeah.
Like
You just take what you want.
that's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Because you're allowed to because you're a dude,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It's and don't get me wrong, man. Like I'm a dude. Like, and I am sometimes my viewpoints are just like archaic, like a lot of people's. However, I'm not satisfied with that. right? Like I'm not satisfied with my life being that, right? Like, and
Yeah. Well,
I don't
and
want that.
I think the flip side to this is you can yeah, there is, I mean, we need to fix a serious problem in our society when 1 in 4 women are getting
Yeah.
sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I think
Oh
about all
man,
the
that is
things
so
that
awful.
I think about all the things that were said over the since 2001 about people from Middle East countries, um, people who wear certain clothing from those countries,
Mm,
and all the evil things like, oh well, if Muslims don't agree with terrorism, they better stand up. And I
mm.
kind of feel like we're at that point where men need to stand up to say no, men shouldn't rape people.
Yeah.
Men shouldn't just grab people or
Yeah.
sexually assault them or compliment their clothing and physique while they're at work. Like
Mhm.
these are just things we shouldn't do anymore.
Well, yeah, and I mean we notice it more and more, right? Like we
Yeah.
notice it. I don't know if you
I do.
have
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like noticed when how women are questioned versus how men are questioned about stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
or addressed about some things. And of
100%.
course not everybody, man. Like
No, no. But
I'm so grateful that we live in a time where schools are inviting people in to speak about things that they never would have had spoken
totally.
about in our time, right? Like,
Absolutely.
um, I talk about this every time I do it, but I just get so encouraged when I speak to high school kids, right? Like
Hmm.
we can we can tell them the truth, right?
Yeah.
Like we can tell them the truth and they can handle it,
Yeah.
they can handle knowing that these things are possible, but it's also
Hmm.
possible not to do them, right?
Yeah.
Like there's also ways to live that don't involve self-destruction,
Yeah. And they don't involve violence towards others. Like
yeah,
I think that's really the thing here is we got to
yeah,
stop raising people to think violence is a solution.
yeah.
And I'm not talking about, if somebody's beating the crap out of you, you fight back. Sure. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about just being passive and letting the world use you as a doormat. But I am saying like we don't need to go out and purposely commit acts of violence
Yeah,
against others without provocation, without
yeah.
reason, just because we want to feel more powerful.
Just
And
because
I
we
think,
want something. Yeah.
yeah, and I think we got to change how we're educating people.
Mhm.
If we have all these problems in society, I think we got to look at society. I
Yeah.
mean, you have people, the school shooters. I mean, that's a lot of violence.
It's
And
a
that's
lot,
a
man.
power thing, man. That's
Mhm.
bullies and people shitting on these people for their whole school life, and they can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
We have, sexual assaults that are just atrocious in this country.
Yeah.
And what I don't see is drastic legislation or drastic changes to organizations or anything to make this go away or get better.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We seem to tend to consider it something like, well, there's some laws, so we'll just deal with that.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's not easy to report them. It's horrible to go through the courtroom process.
Yeah.
Um, I
Oh, and
was
it's not just horrible, but the outcomes are very slim.
dismal.
Yeah, just dismal. Yeah. Sorry, man. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's funny. I don't know why I forgot about this, but I realized that last fall during 2020 during COVID when they first brought courts back,
Yeah.
I actually made it onto a jury
Oh,
in
yeah,
a
that's right,
sexual
man.
assault case,
Yeah.
and I was pretty shocked at how the other jurors really spoke. Um,
Really?
in this case, we had an audio recording of the incident, which was
Yeah.
super fun to listen to.
Oh, God,
Um,
man.
but
God bless you for doing that, brother.
but I'll tell you, like, it was surprising how many jury members were female that were like, nope, I don't believe it.
Really?
The two or three real holdouts, two out of the three real holdouts, two of them were women, older
Wow.
women,
Yeah.
both older women. And I'm not
No, for
generalizing. I'm
sure.
just
They
saying
just
that's what
happen to
they
be
were,
that. Yeah.
and they absolutely refused to go with it. Now
Really?
we were lucky because they actually, long story, but they didn't actually get to cast a vote, so to speak. But it just the fact that like watching that process and
Yeah.
watching how I get it that you're innocent until proven guilty,
Yeah, of course.
but watching the victim having to go through the questions
Yeah.
and basically being questioned on the stand in front of the whole room of people,
Yeah.
No, you wanted it, didn't you? Nah, you really
Yeah.
wanted it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Come on, when you were saying no 21 times, you really meant.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you lead him on when patted him on the shoulder at the club earlier in the night?
Yeah.
Like men
That's
wouldn't have
awful,
to go
man.
through that. Like,
Yeah, that's awful.
like
You know
you
what though,
kick the
dude?
shit out of me.
Yeah.
I don't have to go through that question.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If I sexually assault you, you absolutely will. Then my
That's
lawyer
true.
will absolutely put you right there, right?
That's true.
You know, how could you let it? You're bigger than him, right?
Right.
How could you let him do that?
Yeah.
You're stronger than him. Like they would say all this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
we just flip it and take her out of it, because the victim of a sexual assault or a rape is not worthy, man. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's what they're teaching kids, right?
Yep.
They're teaching kids that you, first of all, you can get away with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and don't get me wrong, that's not going to make kids rape. Okay. It's going to allow kids who are already going to rape, right?
Exactly,
Without
yeah.
consequence. That's
Yeah.
all. I'm not suggesting it's going to create a bunch of new, new offenders. I'm
Mhm.
simply saying that it'll make it a little bit easier for them to offend, right? Without consequence.
I agree, and I think it's it's one of those things where we have pro athletes get away with it, and even when it becomes public, they still basically get away with it. We have actors, the whole movie industry. Weinstein. There's another Harvey Weinstein, guaranteed.
Oh, come on,
Right
man.
now.
Epstein,
Yeah. And
Weinstein, Epstein, like all
yeah,
these
all
people,
of them. They've been replaced already. There's
Oh,
people
yeah.
doing those things still in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and it's like, but when you see society just accept it all,
Yeah.
you're like, well, then I guess it's really not that bad. Like
Yeah, man.
I was
It's
told it was
crazy.
bad, but I'm
Yeah.
seeing all these people get away with rape. Like
I know.
public, we know it.
Yeah.
And all they got to do is go, wow. I think it was consensual.
Luckily, most of us think it's wrong.
Yes.
It's just everyone's definition of what constitutes it is so different, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
especially when they enter into it, what the victim was wearing, right? Like what a stupid thing to say, right?
Well,
oh my God, the mini skirt caused me to. Give me a fucking break, dude.
But do you remember that judge in Alberta, like
yeah, man,
4 years ago? He's like, well, you couldn't run with your skirt up or something. And it was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. What a D-bag,
and he
dude.
was trained to be a judge in sexual assault cases.
Yeah, man. And judges are pretty smart people, supposedly.
Yeah.
Right.
So like it just, and that's what I mean. Like if I think about my daughter, and I think, what is society saying to her? It's telling her that if she ever reports it, she's going to have to face a judge that might go, well, you should have just run faster with your skirt up. Or she's going to have to go through 75 interviews with police in an uncomfortable room talking about every detail that she could possibly fathom over and over again.
And then you can guarantee, you can guarantee that in court, she will be like harassed by the defense, right? Like
completely, yeah.
And shamed by the defense,
yeah.
Right? Harassed, attacked, and shamed. Like it is just, it's not okay, man.
No, and there's so many, people like survivors of this that get no justice.
Yeah.
They get no peace. Their attacker just gets to walk around again.
I hear that, right? And it's true, man. It seems so sorry, my back on this chair is just killing me. But it's been one of those days, man, where I'm pretty sore at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I was going to say. What I started saying?
Well, I was talking about just how like, oh, go ahead.
No, I went.
Yeah, no, I did too. But I guess for me, it's important. Like when I think about how the message of the sends to the youth, I have hope that they will change things, that they will be smarter than us. But at the same time, it's really hard when a lot of young girls and a lot of young people in general, they're not going to have the confidence to go through that process. They're not going to have the confidence to face their teacher who is their attacker, or their gym coach, or their coach, or their
and you know what? That's why they need dads like you. They need uncles. They need moms who are going to do it, right? Who are going to go and say, no fucking way, right?
Exactly.
And that's what they need, man. They need, like, I heard just I'm so grateful um to have heard a story of someone standing up to a group of like bullies, you know.
Mhm.
And it gives me hope, right?
Yeah,
Because that's what we have to do, man. We have to, at some point, we have to stand up and say no
mhm.
more of this crap, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy, because it's not, right?
No.
Like standing up and standing out is hard, right? Like it's
Yeah,
hard. You don't
yeah,
make friends, right? Like
yeah,
you'll have good friends. That's what you'll have. You
yeah.
won't have a lot of them.
No.
Because it's just not popular, right? To tell the truth, it's
Yeah,
not popular to um, yeah, it's not popular to stand up for what's right in a room full of people who are doing what's wrong, right? Like
absolutely.
that has never been popular and it never will be, right?
Hmm.
It alienates you almost instantly,
Yeah,
you know, but it's worth it, right?
yeah.
Because how else are things going to change,
Well, that's
right?
just it. And I think for the rest of us, for those who are trying to fight that fight right now, I think it's imperative that we be the support network that we can be, the strength when we're needed. Like your
Mhm.
job then becomes just to support their battle through this.
That's right.
Um, and I think like I remember there's a motorcycle group, like it's like Bikers Against Child Abuse, and they
Mm.
show up when the child goes to court or whatever,
Yeah,
just as moral support. They have
it's
no
so cool,
legal,
man.
and
Yeah,
it just gives the child a little bit more confidence, right? And a
yeah.
little bit more security. And I think, in a lot of time cases, I think maybe there should be groups for that, for people going to court for these kinds of things. Like,
There and
just,
there are workers who will do it.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
humans who will do that stuff, and I appreciate those humans for
oh
sure, right?
yeah,
Because they know, those people who are there for support, they know how unlikely conviction is, right?
yeah,
Unless it's in a child's case, which is more likely, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
thankfully, but even then, the punishments. I mean, I don't know. Don't get me started on that either.
yeah,
Um, I'll try to weave through it, because it's not like, I mean, the systemic problem, it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we're going to be constantly running around fixing
yeah,
symptoms of it, right? Like
absolutely,
putting band-aids over like bullet holes, right?
yeah,
And we can see what's happening in society. That's not working, man. Like
no,
band-aids over bullet holes aren't going to hold on, man. It's not going to work, right?
no.
Like,
And we need our politicians and our leaders, our police chiefs, our fire chiefs, whatever you want to call them,
yeah.
generals, whoever. We need these leaders to step up and absolutely say that's enough.
Well, yeah, because
We're
they're
ending this now.
well,
Like
for
that's
some
all it takes.
reason, yeah, for some reason, that's the only people that we'll listen to.
Yeah,
Right? Like we won't listen to other people saying it. So like it's got to be the people who are in these organizations, right? Like
yeah,
who take a stand. And I don't mean like a visible waving a flag stand. I
yeah, like
mean an internal stand, right? Where you literally go in and you root it out. Like
yeah,
you investigate it like you've never investigated anything in your life, right? And
yeah,
whoever is doing it, their internal, whatever the army has, like, um, and all the internal departments, like you root it out, right?
hmm,
And I know these people are smart, because I know so
yep,
many police men and women who are absolutely brilliant,
yeah,
right? There's no question they'd be able to root it out, right? But you know what happens? Somehow it just never quite gets that far. Hey, like there's
and
always like
exactly,
a
yeah,
some kind of fall person, right?
yeah,
Who takes the hit and then they say, oh, that's it, we're good, it's
yeah,
clean now, right?
yeah,
um and I just, you and I both know these organizations are like these old organizations, any kind of old organization, banks, whatever it is, they're incestuous so much
hmm,
that they don't talk outside of their silo, right? Like they just
oh yeah,
don't.
yeah. It's like forbidden.
Oh yeah, and then if you do, you're ostracized, right? And when you get ostracized, then you don't have a career for much longer, right?
Exactly.
Like because now the people that you're associating with aren't quite as trustworthy of you, right? Like
Yeah,
it's And it seems like it would be hard to fight that. Like, I'm not going to lie to you.
Mhm.
It seems it's a hard thing to fight doing the wrong thing when everybody around you is saying, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Right. Um,
And
I
that's
heard
where I
it.
think it's important to have those leaders step up and change those policies, rewrite
Yeah.
things, make
Yeah.
things more transparent, add in checks and balances, but not just do it the way they think it should be best. Like
Mhm.
actually communicate with people and
Yeah.
find out what are other militaries doing to do this? What
Yeah.
are other police forces and other countries doing to deal with this?
Well, yeah. And
So
go
maybe
hard at
they,
it.
yeah, like maybe they've got some
Yeah.
good things, but maybe you can take 3 good things from 20 different sources and make a really amazing policy
Yeah.
that starts to deal with these issues.
Well,
Because
you'll
the other thing that,
need,
yeah,
sorry, man. Yeah. You'll
oh,
need that. Like you said, you'll need that 3 or 4 at least
absolutely.
perspectives, right? Yeah. Sorry, man.
And I just, because I think that the disservice, I mean, one of the things that I hate is that, like we have these situations that happen and for whatever reason, these people seem to be, from the perspective of people outside these agencies or whatever, they seem to be protected. And I think that's the barrier you got to break down. You got to, like, especially when you're publicly funded, you have to make the public feel like
Yeah.
there's accountability and that
Yeah.
they know what's going on. Because it's like, I always say this about like marriage. If my wife says, oh, where were you after work today? And I'm like, nowhere.
Mhm.
But I was half an hour later than normal. Well, it doesn't mean I was doing anything bad. But now it's like, but why weren't you honest with me? So now I start to question, well, what else are you not honest with me about? And I think that's what this does is
Yeah.
one incident makes people go, well, but if you're hiding that,
Mhm.
and that's horrendous.
Yeah. And it's horrendous.
What else are you hiding? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to open this little treasure chest.
Yeah. And the one of the things that just popped into my head is like the truth might be that there's just a certain amount of people in every large group that are
Yes,
going to offend in some way,
absolutely.
right? Like whether it's interpersonally or with the public or whoever, right? Like,
Completely.
and I think that's probably the truth is that no
Oh, yeah.
matter where you go, and that's why each organization has their own issues with sexual harassment, with rape,
Yeah.
with all those things, because people are involved, right? And
Yeah.
wherever you go, that's where people are. And we know that there's a percentage of humans that will offend,
Mhm.
right? I don't know what the percentage is, but I understand it's a little bit terrifying.
Well, when 1 in
Like,
4, I think it's pretty
exactly,
high.
dude. It's pretty
Yeah.
high, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's just no way around that. And so it doesn't really matter the organization.
No.
I think what may tip the scales is just how, like you mentioned earlier, the structure of military organizations,
Mhm.
right? The inherent structure of secrecy,
Yes.
right? And knowing that might increase the likelihood of offending. I don't know, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's how it works.
Yeah.
But it seems like it might make sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, fuck, man, that's a terrible topic, eh? Like,
Well, it's a
just,
tough topic, but I do think it's important to talk about. And I do
I do
think
too.
I think there's a lot of groups out there that are trying to help with, we talked about misogynistic ideas or just,
Yeah.
the concept of rape culture in general in our society. And like, I know there's like the Men's Action Network that's trying to bring men together to build better men,
Yeah.
to talk about feelings, but also to talk about the shit you like, cars,
Yeah.
whatever you like, to just understand that you don't have to be some, beer swilling, football playing
Yeah.
guy. That's not what men are. Men are men,
No.
and we
Yep.
do lots of shit, and we're interested in
Yep.
lots of things like every other human.
Yeah, man, we're a lot of things, right?
So, and
Fuck
I
yeah.
think we've just promoted this culture of I'm not a man if I don't do certain things,
Yeah.
and protecting a brother from a rape charge might be one of them things. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like we've
I
built
know,
this
man.
like
It's strange.
it's very strange because
Yeah.
everything about teams is like, what happens in the hot dressing room stays in the dressing room and
Mhm.
things like that. Like I have, I know a fellow who has a horrid story about coming up through the ranks in hockey
Yeah.
and basically being locked in a room and told, well, rape these 2 girls and you can't come out until you're done.
Oh, geez, man.
You know what I mean? Like, and so
Yeah.
he's got to live with that now. And so it's like,
Yep.
yeah,
we didn't even get into sports organizations.
Yeah. And so,
sports,
yeah, like,
yeah.
I don't know. So,
yeah. And that's a huge element, right? That we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
And I mean, because it's one of the most, those are like the NFL, the NBA,
mm-hmm.
Those are some of the most secretive organizations on the planet, right? Much like the Vatican, which we didn't talk about either.
Oh
right?
my God. But what is it about all of those that makes them this? What is the same about all of them? They have tons of power and tons of wealth.
Yeah.
And so they can wield it however they want.
Yep. And they do.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with all these organizations.
Yeah.
They have power and wealth.
You know? Yeah. It makes you wonder why, like, each organization, well, I guess they kind of try to do it with board of directors and stuff. I was thinking, like, it would make more sense to have like senates within these organizations, but I guess that's more of like boards, right? Like, if they're advisory boards, and if they're listened to, right, or if they're token boards, right, because there's organizations that have absolutely token boards, like they're not, they don't do anything but say yes, right, to whoever is in charge, which I get it. I get it. That's part of their function in those organizations. I think that's one of the things, though, that it doesn't really instill a lot of hope in people when these committees in these organizations, like the oversight for the military, right? Like, what are they doing? How has this taken so long to come to light, right?
Absolutely.
Again, I should say.
Yeah.
But like, how does that happen, right? Because these people are professionals, right? The only way I could see it happening is if it's literally a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
well,
because
and you don't want to say that. Exactly. No, and you don't want to say that, not. But you can see how it would lead people to that conclusion.
Absolutely. I'm not saying it's conspiracy, right? But I'm saying it sure seems like it.
Well, yeah, when you hide things and you don't tell us what's going on, and then we find out something really horrible, well, we have to question what else is there. And it just doesn't breed a good relationship.
Yeah, dude, I was oh my God, man, I was in a meeting the other day, and I heard a guy, he said, there's a quote. Anyway, the guy said something, and it was basically, that's just the way it's always been.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
That cop out. And I remember, I was like, man, that quote has never struck me like that before. But this, like, honestly, it hit me, and I was like, that's really weird. That never occurred to me. But it's exactly the same thing. It's saying, everything evolves. I think, I can't remember who said it, but everything evolves except religion. Right. And so, and there's like a real danger for some older programs to start running the risk of turning into a religion. Right. And I can see it from the inside of some of these organizations where that's quite a danger. Like, they don't see it. They don't understand that's how religion started. Right. A few people gathering together for a common purpose, right?
Which was all good. And
all good.
To build community.
Dude, I love my fellowship, right? Absolutely. But still an organization. It still has like hierarchy inside the organization itself, right? Like in the head office, there's hierarchy, right? And then within the rooms, there's all kinds of hierarchy, like unspoken and like definitely hard to get people to admit to that stuff. But you can kind of see it in different rooms, like who people go to, right? And it's not a bad thing. I'm not suggesting it is, but it does start to suggest a little bit of a hierarchy, right?
Absolutely.
And it can be anyone who takes on those roles, right? It's usually people who are somewhat like with it, usually, right? But as people, we make poor choices all the time for our leaders, right? And because we tend to forget that we're all human,
Well, and I think that's a good point. I think something that I would question is, Is it the fact that we've built a culture to put these institutions ahead of the humanity? So, when you look at military and things like that, like we got to put the military before, like, our priority is like, here's our priorities, and isn't being kind human,
Yeah.
being generous human, being
Yeah.
caring to your fellow mankind. It's God, country, whatever. Like it's a different set of priorities, and
It's
I
ludicrous.
And I find it tends to, when you start putting that above everything else,
yeah, man,
that becomes so powerful now.
Yeah,
They
people
can just
don't
do what it
matter.
wants.
Yeah, people
Whereas-
don't matter, man.
Exactly. Whereas like when religions and churches and whatever started, they were small. They didn't have a lot of power. It was just community coming together, making
It's
decisions.
all
for the
about people,
community.
man. Yeah.
And then suddenly it started to shift. Like you said, it kind of always shifts.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets bigger, it has to shift, and then a power structure comes in.
Because people like power. We're inherently drawn towards it, right? Like
Absolutely.
I get that. Because we are, man. Like most of us, when we're given it, we're like not usually turning it away, right?
No.
But some people just don't chase it, right? Like there's thankfully like lots of people don't chase it.
Yeah, and some people handle it well and some people don't.
Yeah, that's for sure. Eh? Like shit.
I mean, just look at your celebrities. Look at how many celebrities like Conor McGregor, likable guy, great fighter, coming up the ranks. And then he gets all this fame and power, and he just goes bonkers and starts throwing chairs through buses. Like, what are you doing?
I know, man. And I mean, honestly, we can't comment on how those people actually live because we see snippets of it.
Exactly.
Right? Like, and do we expect fighters not to get into fights with each other? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Like we're actually going into this fight thing going, no, they're gonna be like really nice all the time, except for that 15 minutes when they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Like these are professional fighters, man. They fight. That's what they do. Right? Like
but it's like as soon as they get that fame, they start believing the fame.
Yeah, because they explode.
Yeah, and then it's like, and I've said this for years, like I'd really like to better understand, like when you see these celebrities that act out, like the Louis C.K.'s and us. I think a part of it is it's like, if you're surrounded by people that never say no to you,
you think you can do anything.
You're just going to naturally start pushing boundaries. You know what I mean?
Well, because you're told yes all the time, right?
Exactly. So like as human beings, like why do we provide boundaries for our children? So that they have structure, so they can grow, so that they, because you have to. And I think as adults, we forget that as adults, we also too need a little bit of structure.
Yeah, we do.
And so if everybody's just saying, yes, you're a god.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, maybe I am. Like, I'll do this if I get away with it.
Yeah.
I got away with it. I am a god.
I guess I can do that.
Like how long did Harvey Weinstein get away with that? Ooh. I'm sure he thought he was freaking untouchable.
Yep. He did, man.
Yeah. So did Bill Cosby, right?
Yep.
And it's because society has built these.
Dude, I can't believe they let that dude out, man.
I can't.
Seriously, man. Like,
yeah.
But I mean, it's right in line with our conversation, right? Like,
exactly.
This is like what happens in our culture is that if there's a loophole to be found, the people who are going to suffer are the victims, right? Yeah, the survivors. The one thing I wanted to mention too, about surviving, right? And coming out of, like, to me, that's justice, right?
Yeah.
Is when a survivor can thrive. That's justice. That is more justice than the offender. I mean, different kind of justice, right? Mm-hmm. I wish all the offenders would be punished. Like that's obviously what I wish for. And I hope that we can get to a system that somehow figures out a way to make it foolproof, right? Like I really, really hope that we advance in that direction, right? 100%. But like to thrive in your life afterwards, right? Like to me, that is the ultimate fuck you, right? To that person, those people, and it doesn't make it right. That's nothing will make it right. Nothing, right?
No.
But when I see survivors climb that ladder,
Yep.
man, it's powerful shit, dude. Like it's powerful shit, right? Because that's mostly that's the only justice you're gonna get, right? Like,
Yeah.
because there really isn't any,
No,
you know.
there isn't.
But and it's not to say that to those we lose in the struggle, like whether it be suicide or overdose or whatever the case may be, um, those who thrive and who keep going, like we're walking with them, right? Like we're all walking together. And I think once we all see that, once everyone who's walking that path sees we're all walking it together, like then things will change, man.
Yeah.
Right. Like when people stop denying what happened to them, right? When people stop and are able to feel safe to tell somebody, or, you know, because people become more comfortable having that conversation, having that really uncomfortable conversation, you know. But I don't know, man.
And I think we, you know, I think with there needs to be a lot more services and help available to people who've gone through this and are going through it. But to me, it's an incredible amount of strength to even go through it. And like, even if people, like, for anybody right now that's not thriving, I mean, it's an amazing amount of strength to just every day get up and keep going forward.
Yeah, man.
Like, I honestly,
really
I don't know how I would deal with it. Like, I don't. And I never want to find out. But I just, to me, you know, that I admire people that go through it, because it is, I can't even fathom how hard it is.
Yeah, man. You know? And to all the humans struggling out there, right? Like,
man.
just one more day, just one day, right? You just got to do it for one day at a time. I tell myself that all the time. Like I tell myself all the time, I just have to get through today. No matter what horrible shit my brain sends forward, I just have to get through today. And
totally.
I just, wow, fuck, we're thinking about you all. We're thinking about you. And
and I think for the rest of us that haven't experienced it, our job is to, if you have somebody that you know that has experienced it, is to be support, is to be in whatever way they want. You know, don't be supportive in the way you think it's needed.
Yeah, just ask them what they need, man.
Yeah, and if they just want quiet time, do that. If they want to be on their own, like, but just let them know, or have them know somehow, that you're just there.
Yeah,
you're there for whatever.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's important in all this, is that we need to build a support network for the 1 in 4 women.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely, man.
And beyond that, the other victims of all.
That is insanity, dude, to say 25% of all women. That is insanity, man.
Well, it's,
and I'm not surprised by that number. It's just insane.
I know. And so anyway, that's I guess, I don't know, I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but
I know, man,
I just really you know, I think it's important we talk about it, and I think it's important that men talk about it, and I think it's important we all talk about it. So
well, and you know, it was interesting. I spoke to one of the high school class yesterday, and the teacher mentioned that I talked about things different in this talk than before. And I said, because I'm more comfortable sharing with you, right? Like the more comfortable I get with you, and the respect that you give to me, because they're very respectful and so just very cool about the whole thing, right? And I'm very grateful for that. But the respect that they show just makes it so much easier to show up, right?
Absolutely.
And to share that stuff that, you know, I don't want to share it. Like I don't want to talk about it, right? But it's necessary, because like you said, we have to talk about it. You know, and that's not to say that I have to talk about it all the time, and I don't, right? Like,
and you can go into varying detail as well.
Totally, right? Like, and I don't go into details. I even told the classes yesterday, I said, the details will just make it more convoluted. That's not going to help you, right? Like what we're hoping for is that if you're in trouble, you reach out to someone. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know that my brain could not solve my brain's problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
it could only feed the ego, right?
Yeah.
That's all I could do is feed my ego. And that means eventually drinking.
Yeah.
And I can't afford that.
Yeah.
But it was just really cool, man. Like I always feel a little hopeful too after those talks,
Yeah.
because
Nice.
like I don't know
Yeah.
about you, man, but I didn't have anybody come into my school and give me their story,
No.
like
No.
and
No.
talk about like using drugs,
No.
and talk about that stuff, like, and however they talked about it, they just never did.
Hmm.
At least, I don't remember. And to be honest with you, man, there's a lot of blank spaces in my past, bro. So I don't want to
Might have been on
say
a day
nobody
at
told
school that
me,
you weren't there. I'm just gonna guess.
or a day when at school when I was drunk, like possibly. Yeah. Yeah,
Again,
quite
not
possibly.
quite fully there.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because I am like Jekyll and Hyde actually when it comes to alcohol. It it is really like my elixir,
Yeah.
and not in a good way. Like
Yeah. Right.
it's like that potion, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you get a chance, check out when we're done here. Check out Pussifer potions. They're on
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah. There's a
Okay.
video, dude. It is wacky, but it is exactly like being caught in the deepest part of your addiction, man. It's
Wow.
just it's quite a video. I really like it. I watch it every once in a while.
Nice.
The song's fucking awesome. So yeah. So anyway, dude, I appreciate you having this conversation with me, man.
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
I'm going to tell you the truth. There was a couple times where my stomach turned and I thought I was going to have to like throw up in a bucket. It's just, it's hard, right?
It
Like
is.
it's hard. And so I hope you take care of yourself tonight, man, and you give yourself a nice, relaxing, like head massage or something, like whatever works for you.
Well, and you too, man. I mean, these things,
Yeah.
they're
Thanks,
hard,
buddy.
and it's hard to listen to. And I mean,
Yeah.
certainly with your experiences, I imagine that it makes it even harder.
It can at times for sure. But I also know, because how free it has made me to be able just to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not always. I don't want to have I don't share my story every day, because that would
Yep.
be too much, right?
Well, and
Like,
that's not all you are.
no, not at
Right?
all. I mean,
So,
there's so much more.
yeah.
And I mean, that's also what I mentioned to the teacher too, was there's just so much more going on than what's on the surface, right?
For sure.
Like
Yeah.
the surface story it's as, I guess, like anyone else's story, really,
Mhm.
right? But under the surface, just like everybody else, there's more going on. And if you hang on, you'll eventually learn what's going on under the surface with people,
Yeah.
right? Like it basically is what happens when we get into relationships and we stay with them over time, right?
Yeah.
We start to learn more and more,
Totally.
because it's not the surface anymore. Now
Yeah.
we're getting to the nitty gritty, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, it's wild, man. Like the whole thing is wild. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a tough subject, and I don't know. There's no. I mean, we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, we need, like, I think there needs to be a push to get things to change. And,
Yeah, there really does, man.
Yeah, we need to. I think is like we need to start focusing inward as a country, as opposed
Yeah.
to focusing outward, and try to correct these issues within our society before telling other societies how bad they are.
Yeah.
But I think this is a serious issue that it just doesn't get dealt with, and
Yeah.
every 6 to 8 months you hear another horrendous story, and everybody's upset. But again, nothing really happens.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but I do think the only way we are going to get change is by fighting it. And, and I think this is a great way. I think the more podcasts we have, the more public awareness we have, and the more people that just start to question, well, why are we letting people just do that? Or why are we letting this organization do that?
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start to get pressure to start changing these things. So, yeah,
I agree. And I mean, we just can't go to sleep on this shit, man. Like,
no.
Same with, the residential school victims, right? We can't go to sleep on this shit, man. It just, this stuff is a real reality, and it's not going away, right?
It's not. and we have to deal with it now. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
because
some of it happened in the past, but guess what? It's happening today still too.
it is, man.
And so
Yeah.
we need to deal with this. And I always
Yeah.
say when it comes to the Indigenous stuff, there's the calls to action, there's the calls to justice, and all of those things. I always think, man, if we instituted those, it would make life better for everyone.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those have things to do with equality and justice, equality in this department, equality here. But it's not equality just for Indigenous people. It's equality.
Equality
And
for everybody.
those, if they actually use those, I think a lot of these things would change. You know, like especially the calls to justice. I mean, that is wholeheartedly focused on missing and murdered Indigenous women. But all of those things would help women across the board.
Of course they would.
Because it's about getting equity in the justice system, equity in the courtroom. It's about victims' rights or survivors' rights. It's about these things.
Equity in the hospitals, equity in all areas of service, right? Like,
yeah, and so it's not just about equity for one group and leave everybody else out. That's going to affect everybody that has to interact with those agencies, those people, those groups. So I just, I think this all kind of lumps into the one thing where it's like, we have a problem with sexual assault.
We do, man. And I mean, there's no way to simplify it, and I don't want to try to, because it's very complicated in cultures, because it seems to be across the globe, right? In cultures. And of course, not every culture is as bad as every other culture. I mean, there's worse than others. And obviously there's a lot of gray in between, right? Like, but it just seems so alive and well everywhere. Right. Where girls have no rights, right? Or if they have rights, like in North America, you have rights, but there's still an undercurrent of holding you down, right? Like, you have visible rights with an undercurrent holding your ankle, right? And so that's the undercurrent is what we need to get at, right? Is we have to stop. We have to, and thank God, like, women are so intense and incredible, right? Because they're gonna get their day. Right. Like, and thank God for that, man. Like, our mayor, congratulations to our mayor, like, amazing, man. I was talking with my dad and we were both like, man, this is so awesome. Right. Like,
it is a very cool time.
It is really awesome, man.
And I really hope that by doing things like that, bringing in more, a variety of people, shall we say, a more diversity of people,
dude, diversity.
An improvement.
Fucking A, man. And we'll not only see improvement in, like, our communities, because we'll just be more open-minded. Holy shit, what a terrible thing that would be, right? Where we're open-minded and we just kind of like flow with each other. That'd be weird, hey? Like, man. And I don't know what it's going to take, but I think it's got to start. It's got to start in these offices, right? Like, whether it's the presidency, the prime minister,
100%.
MLAs, whatever it is, there's got to be this continued shift, man. Like, despite ourselves, right? Despite our worst efforts or our best efforts to quash it.
Absolutely.
Wait for your change, dude. No,
we do.
Yeah, no change.
But so that's, I don't know. I guess that's
cool, brother,
for tonight, man.
Cool, man. Well, let's turn that recording off. And
Voices in Recovery is produced by Freedom's Path Recovery Society, a registered Canadian charity. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider a donation to Freedom's Path Recovery Society. All donations go directly to assisting Freedom's Path in providing their services free of charge and helps us keep the podcast going. We are grateful for any and all donations. The opinions expressed during the podcast are those of the individual and not those of Voices in Recovery or Freedom's Path or any other organization. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast.
This podcast is being recorded on the traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy. This consists of the Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, and the Blackfeet in the U.S. We acknowledge the Stoney Nakoda, which consists of the Bearspaw, Morley, and Chiniki. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina Huadene and the Métis, Inuit, status, and non-status from all of Turtle Island, and those who are visiting. We are all treaty people.